The winter morning in the remote frontier town of Cold Creek was as harsh as anyone could remember. Snow had fallen for 3 days straight, blanketing the wooden cabins, abandoned mining roads, and cattle fields with a thick white quietness. Life in the West was already cruel enough, but the freezing season tested the heart as much as the body. Townfolk hurried through the frost-covered main street, horses snorted nervously in the cold, and lanterns flickered against the biting wind as ranchers wrapped themselves in heavy coats. Folks rarely stopped to look at strangers in winter. Those struggling simply tried to survive until spring. Among them lived a young cowboy named Cole Harding, 26 years old, a quiet single father known for his kindness, steady temper, and hard work. He lived with his 5-year-old daughter Emily in a small cabin outside town, where he raised cattle and chopped wood for the general store. Emily had been motherless since birth, her mother dying during childbirth, leaving Cole to learn how to braid her hair, mend her coats, and read bedtime stories by lamplight. While men in town admired Cole, most pitied him for the burden of raising a child alone. Yet Cole never saw Emily as a burden. She was his reason, his softness, and the only joy he allowed himself. On a dark winter evening, with snow sweeping across the hills like white ghosts, Cole and Emily rode into town with their wagon loaded with firewood. Emily was bundled tightly in a wool coat, sitting close to her father, humming into the cold. She had inherited Cole's gentleness, but also her late mother's sharpness of intuition. When she saw someone suffering, she could not look away. Just before reaching the saloon, Emily tugged Cole's sleeve urgently. "Dad, look." Cole stopped the horse, puzzled by the tremor in Emily's voice. Across the street, beside the entrance of the abandoned telegraph office, sat a young native woman, barely conscious, her dress soaked and thin, her face pale with cold, her black hair heavy with melting snow. She hugged a small blanket to herself, too thin to protect from winter. Her boots were broken, her hands trembled, and breathing looked painful. Cole narrowed his eyes. Townfolk had passed her several times, never stopping, treating her with the silent prejudice many men had toward Native women after long years of conflict. The sheriff had declared that no one should feed or shelter wandering tribes during winter, claiming it encouraged dependence. Most obeyed. Fear disguised itself as rules. Emily gasped with a child's unfiltered heart. "Dad, she's freezing." The words struck Cole harder than the wind. He stepped down, wrapped his coat tighter, and approached the young woman carefully, kneeling so his presence wouldn't startle her. She appeared to be around 22 years old, recently widowed, evident from the beadwork necklace worn only by mourning Native women. Her eyes fluttered open in fear when Cole reached out, but she was too weak to speak. Emily climbed down, tears filling her eyes. She pressed her tiny hands against the woman's icy cheeks. "Dad, please help her." Cole didn't hesitate anymore. He lifted the woman gently, noticing she had no supplies, no food, and no horse. Clearly, she had been traveling alone, dangerous for any person, but deadly for a Native widow during winter. He carried her into the wagon, covering her with blankets. Emily held the woman's hand tightly the whole way home. Cole warmed water over the cabin stove, wrapped the woman in thick quilts, and fed her broth spoon by spoon until she could speak. Her voice was fragile but elegant. She told him her name had been taken by marriage rituals in her tribe, but white townsfolk called her Mina. She and her husband had lived in the western hills, raising 2 small children until illness took them all. She had walked for days, starving and grieving, trying to reach her distant relatives, but the storm caught her. Emily slept beside Mina that night, hand resting on Mina's arm like she was protecting a long-lost family member. Cole sat by the stove, staring at the fire, wondering how a stranger had walked into his life on a winter road and settled into the cracks of his heart in a single evening. Over the following weeks, Mina recovered slowly. She helped Emily learn traditional stitching, cooked venison stew with herbs Cole had never tasted, and sang soft lullabies in a language as ancient as the land. Emily loved every note. Soon Mina felt comfortable enough to tell stories of her people, their ceremonies, their marriages, their memories of peace before settlers arrived. Cole saw life in her eyes again, and something inside him softened. Mina treated Emily like the child she had lost, and Emily treated Mina like the mother she never had. The cabin felt fuller, warmer. Mina tended the garden under Snow, repaired broken tools, and fed cattle with quiet skill. She had a survivor's habits, every small task done with intention. Cole admired her resilience more with every passing day. At first, the townspeople talked. A cowboy keeping a native widow. Is he out of his mind? He'll ruin his chances with proper white ladies. Cole ignored them. Mina and Emily were happy. Nothing else mattered. Emily laughed more than she had since infancy. Mina smiled like she was relearning what home felt like. But the sheriff didn't ignore it. One bitter morning, he rode to Cole's cabin, boots stomping through snow. He ordered Mina to leave before sundown, claiming illegal sheltering. Cole stood between the sheriff and Mina, saying she would leave only over his dead body. Emily squeezed Mina's dress, terrified that strangers could take away the woman she loved like family. The sheriff backed off temporarily, but threatened consequences. That night, Cole spoke honestly to Mina. You don't have to leave. You earned your place here. Mina stared at the fire, trembling. I don't want to be a burden. I have already taken too much. Cole shook his head gently. You saved this home as much as we saved you. Emily whispered from her bed. Please don't leave us. Mina's eyes filled with tears. She stayed. Months passed. Spring melted into summer, and Mina became an accepted presence at the cabin, though not yet in town. She and Cole became quiet partners, their gestures tender, unspoken. Emily called Mina Mama when no one watched, though Mina corrected her softly so Cole wouldn't feel displaced. Cole was not displaced. His heart healed with every stolen moment. 10 years passed. Emily grew into a bright young girl with skilled hands, graceful manners, and a fierce loyalty to family. Mina taught her language, traditions, and herbal medicine. Cole taught her riding, woodcutting, and target practice. Emily became the perfect blend of both worlds. Townfolk had watched from a distance all those years, judging but curious. Cole's ranch became prosperous, his cattle multiplying, his crops thriving, partly due to Mina's agricultural knowledge. Rumors said the cowboy's land had magic because a native woman tended it. When Emily turned 15, tragedy struck Cold Creek. A scarlet fever outbreak swept through town. Dozens fell ill. The doctor had no cure. Mina walked into town with remedies made from wild winter roots and boiled bark passed down by ancient healers. She worked tirelessly, nursing families who had once refused her shelter. She saved children, adults, and elderly alike. Cole supported her, turning the cabin into a medical station, chopping wood for heat, carrying water, and delivering medicine. Within weeks, the epidemic slowed, not because of the doctor, but because of Mina. Cold Creek changed forever. The same townspeople who once sneered at her whispered with awe. Cole was right to shelter her. She saved half the town. She is a blessing. A grateful father rode through the streets, shouting that the native widow had saved his daughter when doctors had given up. Town leaders publicly apologized. The sheriff, humbled, returned to the cabin with his hat removed and said softly, I judged wrongly. Your kindness saved my wife. The entire town gathered at the church to honor Mina. Emily stood proudly beside her, holding her hand, tall and graceful, a young woman uniting two worlds in her very existence. Cole stepped forward and told the town that Mina had been family long before she was a hero. The church fell silent. Then he turned to Mina. You walked into our lives, freezing and alone. Emily saved you that night, but you saved us every day since. I want the whole town to know that this ranch, this family, and this heart are yours. In front of everyone, Cole asked Mina to marry him, not out of gratitude, but love that had built itself slowly over a decade. Mina cried softly, touching his cheek. I already belonged to you before you asked. The entire town applauded. Snow began falling outside the church windows, just like the night they first met. Emily whispered, Dad, she's freezing no more. The three of them stood together, family not by blood, but by choice and courage. And from that winter onward, Cold Creek never turned away a stranger again.